Alright, brothers and sisters. Couldn't find on YouTube anywhere that it had the Nag Hammadi scriptures, the whole information on the whole information on the Gospel of Judas. So what we're doing here is getting to the information provided in this book, which the people on YouTube didn't read. They just jumped straight to the opening. And as soon as we get there, we will just read it. So, this is the Gospel of Judas. It's translated by Marvin Meyer. This is the part that they don't have on YouTube. I couldn't find it anywhere. So, I'm going to upload it for you. The Gospel of Judas. The Gospel of Judas, the third Tetrate in the Codex Danchos, occupies pages 33 through 58. So basically, that's what everybody's reading on YouTube. They're not reading the parts where you need the information to be able to understand the whole thing of the Codex, where it follows the letter of Peter to Philip and James in a vision of the first revelation of James. Also found in the Nag Hammadi Codex, which is this. This is the Nag Hammadi Scriptures. A version of the first revelation of James, also found in the Nag Hammadi Codex. The Gospel of Judas was discovered in the 1970s and was published in 2006. But the title was known from Ignatius of Lyon, who denounced the Gospel of Judas in around 180 as a text read by people he called Gnostics. And Gnostics just means knowledge. People who seek knowledge. And inclined in his denunciation a brief description of his contents. His preface fits quite well the Coptic translation of the Gospel of Judas from Codex Danchos. The Gospel of Judas is given its title at the conclusion of the Tetrate. The Coptic title is that word Piegalon. The Gospel of Judas, I'm just going to skip through some of this and get to the important stuff. It's just telling you what's going on here and how it was brought to this book particularly. As we might expect on the basis of titles of other early Christian Gospels, thus Judas is not designated as the author of the Gospel. Rather is the Gospel about Judas, or even the Gospel for Judas and his relationship to Jesus, and his role in the story of the last days of Jesus are focal points of the Gospel. The Gospel of Judas opens with an insight that identifies the text as a secret revelatory disclosure that Jesus shares with Judas shortly before the time of his crucifixion. After the summary of the career of Jesus, a scene is presented in which Jesus comes upon his disciple as they are celebrating a holy meal together, and he laughs. Jesus laughs a great deal in the Gospel of Judas, as he also laughs a great deal in many of the other books. Here he maintains that he is not laughing at the disciples, but at their their serious desire to do the will of their God. So that's something I wanted to touch on. Their God. When they profess that Jesus is in fact the Son of their God. Jesus himself begs to differ. It turns out that their God is the demiurge. Okay, we're going to go into that. The creator of this world. Basically, we all know that Satan is sentenced to death. Basically, the creator of this world dies, and so do we. Therefore, Satan is the demiurge, and we're going to continue on into that. Yeah, God is the creator of everything, the Most High God, Jesus himself, who came in the flesh. But the thing is the earth was created for judgment. So, to trap the unclean spirits that God had cast out of heaven, and sends them to their damnation. So Jesus came in the flesh into the world that the demiurge created for his pleasure, and came to get his people and set them free so that they can go live the eternal life of joy and comfort. Alright, continuing on. Jesus himself begs to differ. It turns out that their God is the demiurge, the creator of this world, and not the transcendent deity who is exalted over all. The disciples are not pleased by any of this, but they cannot accept Jesus' invitation to stand before him, with the exception of Judas, who stands in front of Jesus but turns his eyes away out of respect. Judas then utters the correct profession of who Jesus is. He says to Jesus, "You have come from the immortal realm of Barbello, and I am not worthy to pronounce the name of the one who has sent you." Barbello is commonly understood to be the Divine Mother, and the Barbello Aeon, which is the realm he came from, is featured in a number of Gnostic texts, especially the Sethian texts. In the extant proportions of the Gospel of Judas, Barbello is mentioned only here, and the profession by Judas may be taken to affirm that Jesus is the Son or manifestation of the transcendent deity. In this scene that follows the Gospel of Judas, Jesus appears several times to speak with the disciples, and at times privately with Judas. Earlier in the text, it is suggested that often Jesus appears to his disciples not as himself, but perhaps as a child. Note that Jesus taught in the Gospels that children was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, because he said you must be converted and become like children, like children, to be able to inherit the kingdom of heaven. What he's saying is that you must be converted and become like children and rely on your Father to take care of you in order to make it into the kingdom of heaven, which is why Jesus came in the first place, to save his children from damnation. But anyway, continuing on. The scenes that follow in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus appears several times to speak with the disciples, and at times privately with Judas. Earlier in the text, it is suggested that often Jesus appeared to his disciples not as himself, but as a child. Much of the conversation between Jesus and his disciples addresses in one way or another the various groups of human beings and religious folks that may be distinguished. And Jesus stresses that a particular group of people is especially blessed. A particular group of people is especially blessed. As in other Scythian texts, this group is claimed to derive from the realms above. And the group is described in the Gospel of Judas as the generation of Seth. Basically, what we're saying here is, if you don't know anything about the serpent seed doctrine, that's where that's going with that. As the generations of Seth, in a manner that recalls the reference to those people in the revelation of Adam. The disciples report a vision of the Jerusalem temple, or possibly a visit to the temple, and Jesus uses the occasion to interpret the account of the disciples allegorically. What the disciples have seen in Jerusalem is interpreted as a foreshadowing of the emerging Orthodox Church, with its pronunciation of the sacrificial death of Christ and its commitment to the celebration of the Eucharist and the practice of martyrdom. And the Orthodox leaders are depicted in terms that are neither flattering nor politically correct. If Irenaeus lashes out at the people behind the Gospel of Judas, they come back with equal hostility against him and his friends. Judas also has his own vision of the Gospel of Judas. He tells Jesus that he has seen himself being persecuted by the other disciples, an allusion to the increasingly negative place of Judas in much of early Christian tradition. And he asks the opportunity to be at home in an exalted mansion above. Jesus responds, "No person of moral birth is worthy to go into the house you have seen. That place is kept for the saints, where the sun and moon will not rule, nor the day, but they will stand there always in the eternal realm with the holy angels." Yet Judas is the 13th daemon, and although he will be opposed and even cursed in the end, and in the Gospel of Judas, he will be vindicated. Basically, this vindication, I'm going to tell you how it has been established right now. His vindication is that he knew what he had to do because Jesus had told him what he had to do. So God told him that he had to do something, and he obeyed his commandment. That's all that it was. He was vindicated at the end. Basically, back to what we were saying, the people, the humans, because we die, he had to be rabbit ears quotation marks, betrayed by Jesus, or by Judas. Jesus did, in order for him to even go to the cross and save his people. So Judas played a humongous part in the salvation of humanity, and that's his vindication. So basically, Jesus said that he was vindicated because of his keeping the commandments, and that's what gets you to heaven. But he did have to. He did indeed end up killing himself, and the field of blood and all that stuff. But yeah, that's that. So basically, that also ties into everything needing to be exactly the way it is. And if you don't understand that and you don't walk in that, then there's no way you can see the kingdom of heaven, and you're not saved, no matter how much you want to believe it. Like, no matter how much you want something, and you're going to try to strive for it, sometimes you just can't get it. That's life telling you, listen here, I'm in charge. This is the part of you that's going to die. This is the part of you that's not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. And this is the explanation that I'm giving you to Judas being vindicated. Okay, we're continuing on. Essential part of the discussion between Jesus and Judas involves Jesus revealing to Judas at length the nature of the divine and the way in which the divine extends itself through emanations and manifestations down to our world below. The divine light from above shines down into this world, and the transient deity, the great invisible spirit, a well-known phrase used among the Scythians to depict the highest deity, comes to expression through the self-generated autogenes and a host of angels, luminaries, aeons, realms, which we would call aeons, realms, heavens, firmaments, and heavenly atomas, and perhaps Seth. The four unnamed angels who come forth to serve as attendants to the self-generated. Self-generated, you can pretty much guess what that is. Self-generated may bring to mind the four luminaries of Scythian lore. Harmazel, Aurorial, Deviathai, and Ellithi. The massive assemblage of entities termed the cosmos or universe is called corruption. So basically, I just explained to you the corruption. The corruption has to go. Corruption cannot enter the kingdom of God. And the demiurge's powers, named Nebro, Yada, Off, and Sakalas, or Cycle, familiar with the Scythian text, set up as a Berberaic structure and create this world and human beings in this world. Much of the cosmological material of the Gospel of Judas recalls accounts, especially Scythian accounts, of the evolution or de-evolution of the divine. Okay, so this is actually a really important text to read. It's telling us about the evolution or the de-evolution of the divine. Okay, that's going back to what I explained about what the world was made for. It was made for the judgment of the corruption, for the de-evolution of the divine, and the evolution of those who came with us, with the group that rebelled, to return back home, to evolutionize, or the de-evolution of the divine. Close parallels may be noted between the Gospel of Judas and the secret book of John and the holy book of the great invisible spirit, as well as Iragostos the blessed and the wisdom of Jesus Christ. Sophia, personified wisdom, is not presented in this cosmological revelation of Jesus, although she is referred to once earlier in the Tesseract in a rather fragmented passage, and as corruptible wisdom. It is theoretically possible that she may be lurking in a lacuna in the revelation, but it may be difficult to find room for her in the available gaps within the text, and there may be no explicit fall of Sophia recounted in the Gospel of Judas further, except for a single mention of Christ in the cosmological revelation. The cosmological revelation is when Jesus explains to Judas his commitment to the Father and why he's even here on earth. The entire revelation, though placed on the lips of Judas and reflected of Hellenistic Jewish thought, and this section may come from a Scythian Jew account on the transcendent nature of the divine and the origin of the universe. If this is the case, a Jewish mythological or Gnostic source may lie behind the section of the Gospel of Judas, and Jewish speculation may have been taken over and lightly Christianized as the teaching of Jesus in the Gospel of Judas in a way that is reminiscent of the secret book of John, which also seems to have been composed as a Jewish text and Christianized as the revelation of Jesus to John, the son of Zebedee. Near the end of the Gospel of Judas, Jesus turns to Judas and says, "But you will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man who bears me." Here Jesus is indicating that Judas will do exactly what Jesus says he will do. The inner person of Jesus, the spiritual person, the true person, will be liberated from the fleshly body. Going back to what I was explaining earlier, Judas will turn in the fleshly body of Jesus to the authorities to be crucified. Judas Iscariot often demonizes and marginalizes in Christian tradition. It's explaining that he's usually demonized for being a really bad guy, but in reality, he's the one. I explained that he's the one who Jesus told him to do this so that he could be released from his body, go down to hell, set free Adam, Eve, all them, and take them back to heaven. And Judas will turn in the fleshly body of Jesus to the authorities to be crucified. Judas, often denominized in Christian tradition, is restored to a position at the side of Jesus as a loyal and insightful disciple of the Gospel of Judas. And here Judas is completely devoted to Jesus. Jesus goes on to remind Judas that he has now been fully informed in the divine light and in the stars. See, you can put all this together. When you get to a point of your knowledge and understanding of how God rules over the all, and understanding that it's His will that is done here on earth, people just can't see past what is placed before them, like on commercials and stuff, because you buy that stuff because it's placed in you for you to be able to do that. You just can't see past it. Once you see past that, you can see the kingdom of heaven, and you see how everything is linked together in order for the end times to be fulfilled and New Jerusalem to come down upon the earth and reign in everlasting peace and comfort. I mean, it's all perfect. Everything is perfect, but to some, it's not that way, because though to us it is, but to some it's not, because they lie in the corruption still. They're still part of the corruption. They're not aware of the all-existent God setting up the role for the taking out of all corruption, because that's what's happening, and the corruption has to exist in order for that to be taken out. So it's actually really simple. It's simple as it gets. All right, continuing on. Throughout the text, the role played by the stars seem to presuppose the influence of the Platonic thinking upon the traditions within the text. We may think, for example, of the discussion of Plato's Timaeus on the way in which the Creator assigned each soul to a star. Near the conclusion of the Gospel of Judas, Jesus tells Judas, "The star that leads the way is you. Is your star." So that's, after I just got done explaining all that to you, that's what he's saying right there. The star that leads the way is your star, because he understands that. Judas lifts up his eyes, gazes at the light, and enters the light. And from within the light, a voice speaks out to Judas and is enlightened. What the voice actually says, alas, is largely lost to the deterioration of the papyrus, but the scene presents what may be described as the transfiguration of Judas or Jesus. Basically, I'm not going to add anything to the Gospel of Judas, But what I'm telling you right now, as far as everything being linked up and Judas being that key figure in destroying the corruption with Jesus, along with Jesus, is what was taken out. I mean, because it was taken out because people don't know that. That's why people don't know that, because it was taken out. Because only people who have already entered the kingdom of heaven know that. Only people that know that the righteous make it to heaven, they make it to righteous because their morals are gone. Everything needs to be done. Everything needs to be done. There is no bad thing done in the will of God. But them corrupted and the people that think there is a right and a wrong way to do things, they're corrupted. There's only one way to do things, and that's why they oppose themselves, as explained in 2 Timothy 2. They oppose themselves and are taken captive by Satan's will. Anyway, continuing on. Judas lifts up his eyes, gazes at the light, and entered the light. And from within the light, a voice speaks out, and Judas is enlightened. What the voice actually says is, alas, largely deterioration of the papers. But the scene presented what described as the transfiguration of Judas or Jesus. The Gospel of Judas concludes with the act of Judas handing Jesus over to the high priest and the scholars. The text does not include a passion narrative or any account of the crucifixion of Jesus. The last words of the Gospel read, and Judas received some money and handed him over to them. That, after all, is a primary message of the Gospel of Judas. Judas, the disciple closest to Jesus, does what Jesus declares he will do to the end. The text of the Gospel of Judas has also been interpreted in a dramatically different fashion at an international colloquium on the Gospel of Judas held in Paris on October 26, 2006. April DeConnick and John Turner presented papers in which they suggested that Judas in this gospel may be taken as essentially a tragic figure. The key passage is that is open to different understandings is the statement in which Jesus declares that Judas will exceed all of them. I've already explained to you in truth what that is. DeConnick and Turner have proposed that this might mean that Judas will exceed all those who sacrifice to the god of this world, Sakala, and who participate in evil within this world. Okay, we gotta go back to Isaiah. I'm just gonna stop right here. We gotta go back to Isaiah. It says in Isaiah that I am the Lord thy God who creates good and evil. I do all these things. That's what it says. Anyway. So this is their interpretation is their interpretation. Let's just say that. And who participate in the evil within this world. We're gonna start over. D and Turner have proposed that this might mean that Judas will succeed all those who sacrifice to the god of this world, Sakala, and who participate in the evil within this world by actually being more evil than all of them. Yeah, that. And he, after all, he will perform the act of betraying and sacrificing his master. According to this interpretation, the cloud of light that Judas may eventually enter is not luminous cloud or the divine realm. This is I don't think we're going to read this because I'm not okay with this. It's not right. It's not. But it is in a sense that we needed to do it. So do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, all this has to happen. Everything does. Alright, we're going to skip through all that. November 2006 at the Society of Biblical Literature annual meeting in understanding of the conclusion of the Gospel of Judas. In the Gospel, after Jesus says to Judas, "You will sacrifice the man who bears me." Basically, what Jesus said is I'm inside of this body that was made from Mary, and but God was the spirit because she didn't have sex with a man, right? So that's how he had to come into the system in order to save his people, right? You will sacrifice the man who bears me, but you won't kill God. That's what they were saying up here in that other part. They were trying to explain some other stuff, and it was just not making any sense to me at all. It's confusing, and confusion is of the devil, so we don't deal with that. 4 statements reminiscent of the lines and of the Psalms, and are added. And these statements appear to reflect with the strength of the spirit that is necessary. If Judas is to hand Jesus over to the authorities, in addition to these observations, it may also be possible to compare the varied ways that Judas is described in the Gospel of Judas, with features of the portrayal of the wisdom of the divine within this world, according to Pistis Sophia, the Book of Jev, the Irenaeus of Leon, and Pistis Sophia Wisdom. The Judas, like Judas in the Gospel of Judas, derives from the 13th aeon, is likened to a daemon, is oppressed in this world, and is destined to return to the 13th aeon. Oh wow, that's cool. So he does go back. He goes back to where he came from, is what it's saying. So he came here to do his work just like Jesus did, and he gets to return to his realm. That's what an aeon is. It's a living realm, in a sense. The Gospel of Judas is the Scythian Gospel, preserved in a Coptic translation that may be dated with the confidence to the late 3rd or early 4th century. Most of the Coptic texts have been recovered thanks to the dedication, restoration, and conservation efforts. Fragments of papyrus and 1/2 of folio of the Gospel of Judas may still be in the hands of collectors or institutions, although some of the text has clearly been lost forever. So what you're going to see in this text is you're going to see blank spots. The work of the addition or restoration of the Lecuna may well continue for some time to come. The Gospel of Judas was originally composed in Greek, and we may date the composition of the earlier Greek version of the Gospel of Judas to around the middle of the 2nd century before Irenaeus commented on the Gospel of Judas in about 180. This makes the Gospel of Judas an early text in the Scythian tradition and a key text for our interpretation of the Scythian school of thought. The place of composition is unknown. The translation given here is somewhat provisional, and we should anticipate that additional restoration, reconstruction, and interpretations will be proposed as time passes. And this is the opening. And I'm going to let our sister read this stuff here, and we'll have it up on the screen here for you in just a short bit.
The secret revelatory discourse that Jesus spoke with Judas Iscariot in the course of a week, 3 days before his passion. When he appeared on the earth, he performed signs and great wonders for the salvation of humankind. Some walked on the path of justice, but others stumbled in their mistakes, and so the 12 disciples were called. He began to discuss with them the mysteries that transcend the world and what will happen at the end. Many a time he does not appear as himself to the disciples, but you will find him as a child among them. Now one day he was with his disciples in Judea, and he happened upon them as they were assembled together, seated and practicing their piety. When he drew near to his disciples as they were assembled together, seated, and giving thanks over the bread, he laughed. The disciples said to him, "Master, why are you laughing at our prayer of thanksgiving? What is it we have done? This is what is proper." He answered and said to them, I'm not laughing at you. You aren't doing this out of your own will, but because in this way your God will be praised. They said, Master, you are the Son of our God. Jesus said to them, How is it that you know me? I tell you the truth, no generation will know me among the people who are with you. When his disciples heard this, they began getting angry and hostile and blaspheming against him in their minds. Jesus recognized that they did not understand, and he said to them, Why has your concern produced this hostility? Your God who is within you and his powers, and you have become angry within your souls. Let any of you who is a strong enough person bring forward the perfect human being and stand before my face. They all said, We are strong. But none of their spirits dared to stand before him except Judas Iscariot. He was able to stand before him, yet he could not look him in the eye, but he turned his face away. Judas said to him, I know who you are, and from what place you have come. You have come from the immortal realm of Barbello, and I am not worthy to pronounce the name of the one who has sent you. Jesus understood that Judas was contemplating the rest of what is lofty, and he said to him, Move away from the others, and I shall explain to you the mysteries of the kingdom, not so that you can attain it, but you will go through a great deal of grief. For somebody else will take your place so that the 12 disciples may be complete once again with their God. Judas said to him, When will you explain these things to me? And how will the great day of light dawn for the generation? But when he had said these things, Jesus departed from him. The next day in the morning he appeared to his disciples. They said to him, Master, where did you go, and what did you do when you departed from us? Jesus said to them, I went to a different generation, one that is great and holy. His disciples said to him, Lord, what is the great generation that is exalted over us and is holy, but is not present in these realms? When Jesus heard these things, he laughed and said to them, Why are you reflecting in your minds about the generation that is powerful and holy? I tell you the truth, no one born of this realm will behold that generation. No angelic host of the stars will rule over that generation. No human of mortal birth will be able to accompany it, because that generation is not from, text missing, that has come to be, text missing. The generation of people among you is from the generation of humanity, text missing. Power which, text missing, through which you rule. When his disciples heard these things, each one was troubled in spirit. They were speechless. On another day, Jesus approached them. They said to him, Master, we have had a vision of you, for we have seen dreams of great power last night. He said to them, Why have you, text missing, and hidden yourselves away? They said, We have seen a huge house in which there was a great altar and 12 men. They were priests, we would say, and a name. A crowd was in attendance at that altar until the priests were done presenting the offerings. We also were in attendance. Jesus said, What kind of people are the priests? They said, Some abstain for 2 weeks. Some sacrifice their own children, others their wives, in praise and humility with one another. Some have sex with men. Some perform acts of murder. Some commit all sorts of sins and lawless deeds. And the men who stand before the altar call upon your name, and through all the actions of their deficiency, that altar becomes full. After they said these things, they became silent, since they were upset. Jesus said to them, Why are you upset? I tell you the truth, all the priests who stand at that altar call upon my name. I tell you again, my name has been written on the, text missing, of the generations of the stars through the generations of people. They have planted trees in my name without fruit in a shameful way. Jesus said to them, You are the ones presenting the offerings at the altar you have seen. That is the God you serve, and you are the 12 men you have seen. And the cattle brought in are the offerings that you have seen. They are the multitude you lead astray before that altar. The ruler of this world will stand and use my name in this manner, and generations of pious people will cling to him. After him, another man will come forward from those who are immortal, and another will come from the child killers, and another from those who have sex with men and those who abstain. and the rest of those who are impure and lawless and prone to error, as well as those who say, "We are like angels." They are the stars that bring everything to its end. For the generations of people it has been said, "Look, God has received your offerings from the hands of the priests. That is a minister of errors. But it is the Lord who commands all, who is the Lord of all. On the last day they will be put to shame." Jesus said to them, "Stop sacrificing," text missing, "that you have," text missing, "on the altar, since they are over your stars and your angels, and they have already come to their end there. So let them be," text missing, "before you, and let them go," text missing, "generations," text missing. "A baker cannot feed all of creation that is under heaven." And when the disciples heard these things, they said to him, "Lord, help us, save us." Jesus said to them, "Stop disputing with me. Each of you has your own star, and everyone," text missing, "that has not come," text missing, "spring of water for the tree of this world," text missing, "after a while," text missing, "but that one has to provide water for the paradise of God, and the race that will endure, because that one will not defile the way of life that generation, but from eternity to eternity." Judas said to him, "Rabbi, what fruit is it that this generation produces?" Jesus said, "The souls of all generations of people will die. When these people, however, bring the time of the kingdom to completion, and the Spirit parts from them, their bodies will die, but their souls will be alive and will be taken up." Judas said, "And what will the rest of the generations of people do?" Jesus said, "Nobody can sow seed on rock and harvest its produce. This is also how the defiled race and corruptible wisdom," text missing, "the hand that created mortal people, and their souls ascend to the eternal realms on high. I tell you the truth, there is no authority or angel or power that will be able to behold these realms, that this great holy generation will behold." After Jesus said these things, he went off. Judas said, "Master, just as you have listened to all of them, now also listen to me, for I have seen a powerful vision." Jesus heard this and laughed, and said to him, "O 13th demon, why are you so excited? Speak your mind then, and I'll hear you out." Judas said to him, "I have seen myself in the vision as the 12 disciples were stoning me and treating me harshly. And I also came to the place that," text missing, "after you. I saw a house," text missing, "and my eyes could not grasp its dimensions. Important people moved around in it. That house had a thatched roof, and within the house there was a crowd," text missing. "Master, let me also come in with these people." Jesus answered and said, "Your star has deceived you, Judas. Further, no person of mortal birth is worthy to go into the house you have seen. That place is kept for the saints, where sun and moon will not rule, nor the day, but they will stand there always in the eternal realm with the holy angels. Look, I have told you the mysteries of the kingdom, and I have taught you the error of the stars, and," text missing, "send," text missing, "on the 12 realms." Judas said, "Master, is it possible that my seed is subject to the rulers?" Jesus answered and said to him, "Come, that I may," text missing, "but you will go through a great deal of grief when you see the kingdom in its entire generation." When Judas heard these things, he said to him, "What advantage is there for me, since you have set me apart from that generation?" Jesus answered and said, "You will be the 13th, and you will be cursed by the other generations, but eventually you will rule over them. In the last days they will," text missing, "up to the holy generation." Jesus said, "Come, that I may teach you about the things that no person will see. For there is a great and infinite realm, whose dimensions no angelic generation could see, in which there is the great invisible Spirit, which no eye of angel has seen, no thought of the mind has grasped, nor was it called by a name. And a cloud of light appeared in that place, and he said, 'Let an angel come into existence as my attendant.' And a great angel, the self-generated God of light, came from the cloud. 4 more angels came into existence because of him from another cloud, and they served as attendants for the angelic self-generated. And the self-generated said, "Let Adamus come into existence." And the emanation came to be. And he created the first luminary to rule over him. And he said, "Let angels come into existence for adoration of him." And 10,000s without number came to be. And he said, "Let an eternal being of light come into existence." And he came to be. He established the second luminary to rule over him, with 10,000s of angels without number for adoration. This is how he created the rest of the eternal beings of light, and he made them rule over them. And he created for them 10,000s of angels without number for assistance. Adamus was in the first cloud of light, which no angel could see among all those who are called God. And he, text missing, that, text missing, after the image, text missing. And after the likeness of this angel, he revealed the incorruptible generation of Seth to the 12 luminaries, 24, text missing. He revealed 72 luminaries in the incorruptible generation by the will of the Spirit. The 72 luminaries in turn revealed 360 luminaries in the incorruptible generation by the will of the Spirit, so that their number would be 5 each. Their Father consists of the 12 eternal beings of the 12 luminaries, and for each eternal being there are 6 heavens, so that there are 72 heavens for the 72 luminaries, and for each of them 5 firmaments, in order that there might be 360 firmaments. They were given authority in a great angelic host without number, for honor and adoration, and in addition virgin spirits as well, for honor and adoration of all the eternal beings in the heavens and their firmaments. Now the multitude of these immortal beings is called cosmos, that is, corruption, through the Father and the 72 luminaries with the self-generated and his 72 eternal beings. There the first human appeared with his incorruptible powers. The eternal being that appeared with his generation, the one in whom are the cloud of knowledge and the angel, is called El, text missing, realm, text missing. After these things, text missing, said, "Let 12 angels come into existence to rule over chaos in the underworld." And look, from the cloud an angel appeared, whose face was blazed with fire, and whose countenance was fouled with blood. His name was Nebro, which is interpreted as rebel, but others called him Yaldabaoth. And another angel, Sakla, also came from the cloud. So Nebro created 6 angels with Sakla to be attendants, and these produced 12 angels in the heavens, and each one received a share in the heavens. And the 12 rulers talked to the 12 angels, "Let each of you," text missing, "and let them," text missing, generation, text missing, 5 angels. The first is Seth, who is called Christ. The second is Harmatoth, who is, text missing. The third is Galilah. The fourth is Yobel. The fifth is Adonaios. These are the 5 who ruled over the underworld, and the first over chaos. Then Sakla said to his angels, "Let's create a human being after the likeness and after the image." They formed Adam and his partner Eve, who in the clouds is called Zoe. For all the generations seek him under his name, but each of them calls her with their own names. Now Sakla did not command, text missing, except, text missing, the generations, text missing, this, text missing. And the ruler said to him, "Your life is extended for a time, along with your children." Judas said to Jesus, "What advantage is there for a human being to live?" Jesus said, "Why are you concerned about this, that Adam, along with his generation, has received the length of his life with a designated period of time, in the place where he has received his kingdom with a designated period of time with his ruler?" Judas said to Jesus, "Does the human spirit die?" Jesus said, "This is the reason why God commanded Michael to give the spirits of people to them on loan for adoration. But the Great One commanded Gabriel to give spirits to the great generation without a king, the spirit and the soul. Therefore, the rest of the souls, text missing, light, text missing, around, text missing, spirit within you, which you have made to dwell in this flesh among the generations of angels. But God caused knowledge to be granted to Adam and those who are with him, so that the kings of chaos in the underworld might not dominate them. Judas said to Jesus, "Then what will these generations do?" Jesus said, "I tell you the truth. The stars above all bring matters to their end. When Sackcloth completes his time designated for him, their first star will shine with the generations, and they will bring to completion what has been mentioned. Then they will do immortal things in my name and slay their children, and they will, text missing, in my name, and your star will rule over the 13th realm." Afterward, Jesus laughed. Judas said, "Master, why are you laughing at us?" Jesus answered and said, "I'm not laughing at you, but rather at the error of the stars, because these 6 stars wandered around with these 5 warriors, and all of them will be destroyed with their creatures." Judas said to Jesus, "Those who have been baptized in your name, then what will they do?" Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, this baptism in my name," text missing, to me. "I tell you the truth, Judas. Those who bring sacrifices to Sackcloth, text missing, God, text missing, everything evil. But you will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man who bears me. Already your horn has been lifted up, and your anger has flared up, and your star has burned brightly, and your heart has grown strong. I tell you the truth, your last days, text missing, become, text missing, grieve, text missing, the ruler, since he will be overthrown. And then the image of the great generation of Adam will be magnified, for before the heaven, the earth, and the angels, that generation from the eternal realms exists. Look, you have been informed of everything. Lift up your eyes and behold the cloud and the light that is within it and the stars that are circling it. And the star that leads the way is your star." Judas lifted up his eyes and beheld the cloud of light, and he entered it. Those who were standing on the ground heard a voice coming from the cloud, saying, "Great generation," text missing, image. Now their high priest murmured because he had stepped into the great room for his prayer. But some scholars were there watching closely in order to lay hold of him during the prayer, for they were afraid of the people, since he was regarded by all of them as a prophet. And they came over to Judas and said to him, "What are you doing in this place? You are Jesus' disciple." He answered them in accordance with their wish, and Judas received some money and handed him over to them.